Hello, everyone. I am David Ivers. I'm the artistic director of South Coast Repertory, and I am with this wonderful young man named Charlie O, who is the playwright of Coleman 72, which appears as the second installment of this year's Pacific Playwrights Festival. An extraordinary young man who I've had the pleasure of working with over this last few weeks. A week in the room and many weeks on the phone and on Zoom. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So for the audience, we just finished shooting the reading 2 days ago. So I'm still coming down from, that adrenaline of being in a theater, putting up a show, right? I haven't done that in a long time. So I'm still, I have that little bit of, post-show melancholy because I really just like being in a theater. Imagine that.
I'm with you. It was a really wonderful and enriching experience, I know, for me, and I know for SCR, having you here, having those really remarkable actors and the production crew and everyone that was involved. And, you've written a stunning play. I believe that the PPF process was revelatory for all of us about it, and that we got a lot of work done. Do you want to? So, everyone that's watching this interview is going to see the reading, we hope. These are great interviews because we get to talk about the play without giving too much away. But saying that, what you want to tell us a little bit about? I know these stories, but Coleman 72 is a remarkable play for a lot of reasons, but I know it's deeply personal, and perhaps that's why it's so remarkable. Do you want to talk about the genesis of it a little bit and so the container?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started writing this play about a year ago, and it is a play that I started writing when I had just gotten back to Chicago at the beginning of the pandemic. I usually live in New York, and I came back to Chicago for what I thought would be 2 weeks, and it ended up being a whole lot longer. And I was in my childhood bedroom in my home with my family and with my grandmother who lives nearby. And I wanted to find a vehicle to write about ideas about family, about Korean identity, about memory and how you remember people in your life. And this play is based on a real road trip that my dad's side of the family, my Korean side of the family, took in the 1970s across America in a Coleman, maybe, trailer. And and that was really a genesis point to start thinking about these big questions about family and memory and identity and what it means to make a home somewhere, and talking to a lot of my friends who are Korean American, but also Chinese American, Japanese American, Vietnamese American, kind of talking about that initial immigrant experience, right? And that dissonance, that is so baked into the story of this road trip of a very new to America Korean family doing something that's so quintessentially Americana, right? And how that bounces and reflects off of the different characters. And it was a play that was kind of really interesting because I wrote it in this first month of the pandemic where everything was so still, right? No one was doing anything, right? And that time was such a meditative time, and this thing kind of just poured out of me in that month. And then obviously cuts and moves and trims and revisions and new scenes and taking things out and adding things in. but it was a really gratifying experience to write this, because it was also a really great reason to call my family members, right, in this time that we were all really isolated, and say, what do you remember about this? And what do you remember about this? And I feel like a lot of the dramatic engine of the play came from how different the memories were at times, and like the first, this isn't a spoiler, the first two lines of the play are, it was the first day of summer. No, it wasn't. Right. And from the very beginning, we have this, we had these unreliable narrators kind of working their way through this memory in this summer. Yeah. So that's kind of that's the genesis of the play. Well, and then we've taken it in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah. You talk about memory, right? It's not, I mean, this is one of the many things I think is remarkable. So it's not, there's a meta level here, because it's not just your family's memory of this story, or your memory that you knew had happened, but also the characters in the play you wrote are also three of them. Four of them are looking back at 1972. So there's a construct here at play about memory, because it's not just set in 1972. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So the play it toggles between 1972 and 2010. Right. And there are reasons for that, that we won't give away, because you'll watch the reading and you'll love it. Yeah, but it's really, my dad's a lawyer, and a word that I kept on coming back to is the litigation of memory, right? How you hash out memories and experiences between people, and how those things are kind of formed in relationship with each other, right? And so the characters in the play are also in this active process of working through and remembering. And I think some of the moments that I'm most excited by are the moments when these timelines start to mesh and intersect, right? And because that's the messiness of family and memory and experience kind of all coming together. So that's the stuff that I was really excited, and I think was really like the fun, crunchy pieces to work through, right, in our week.
Yeah. I mean, it's simultaneously a really short amount of time, right? Pacific Playwrights Festival, but also like oddly feels like it's taffy-like in some ways, right? Because I know that there were moments in the play that we focused and had conversations about maybe 6 lines that took, that took a lot of attention, but what they reveal about what you've written. And I think because of how succinct and specific and lively what you've written is, like, it's still a good amount of time to get to work on the play.
Oh my gosh.
You had a day off in between to rewrite and write. And
yeah, that was great. And it was actually a really helpful thing. So we took Wednesday off. So we had Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we filmed on Saturday. And having this, I think that rehearsals sometimes are so go, 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 go. And to have that day where you can really bring in new pages and take a second and reflect on what you've learned, right? Because so much of a reading is just sensory and data overload, right? And you're hearing it out loud with these actors for the first time, in a room for the first time. All these questions are flying at you as a playwright that are awesome, but sometimes, it's such an interesting experience to be in a room where people are all kind of turning to and asking you a question about something in your play. And sometimes the answer is genuinely, I don't know yet, and getting, and, having that Wednesday is a time where you were actually able to be comfortable in the I don't know for a little bit, which I think is productive.
Yeah. I know you have only had a couple days to reflect here, but are there things that are, are there things that are marinating or that stuck with you saying, I want to get back to that, or I'm still lingering on these questions? There are for me, I know, but I'm curious about how you feel about, like, we both talked about having this sort of lonely moments afterwards of this quick family you make, and how tight it was. A pretty tight group for 5 days, beautifully so.
Yeah.
So are there things that you're looking at in the script now or thinking about where you're like, I want to get back to that, or I'm going to let that rest for a bit?
I have like a little document of like all these different bullet points and questions. Some of them are as small as a line here or a line there. Some of them are, what happens if the memory play only starts halfway through now. There's some big questions, some small questions that I don't, and some of them are, and I think that's that's what being in process is about, is, it's like the scientific, it's like the scientific method, where it's like you can have 20 hypotheses, and you're not married to any of them, right? You can toss ones, right? So I'm still at that phase where I'm just collecting hypotheses about how I want to change the play and move the play, and some of them are insane, and I will toss them out eventually. Yeah. I think specifically the thing that is just the most open-ended question in our play is how the memory works, right? And so much of that is stuff that you can start to play with in a staged reading, but so much of that is also about texture and light and staging and design and kind of building a world to capture this stuff. And that's just one of those open-ended questions that I think we took some huge steps on this week, right?
Yeah,
and really,
I do too.
really about clarifying, especially in 2010, why this is urgent for the characters in that moment. And I think that is, which is the most important question. And I think then there's we found, finding the what, and then I think the next question is finding the how of it, right? And
totally.
Which is exciting.
I totally agree with you. I feel like that was a huge stride. That and our audiences should know that like a whole new scene showed up in a hotel room. You know what I mean? That you and I had talked about. I had no idea what you were bringing to it. We just talked about this thing with a character, and boom. And the way that anchored both sides of the play, I think, both sides of it. It was.
That's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite scenes in the play now.
Me too. Me too. I agree. And it does. It goes a long way to give the memory a stake for that character too. And I think I think that is one of the exciting things that came out of PPF this year for me with this play as a director, and collaborating with someone like you who has such a tremendous spirit, and because you're also an actor, of which I am too, you're not just looking through one lens, and you have this beautiful collaborative sense about you. And not all writers, no two artists are alike in any discipline, but that's a special gift I think that you brought to this for the whole room. And it was fun how, I've always said, like, the more specific notes get, it's because the work is so specific, so you can get down to the textures, the small textures, and I love that.
This comma.
Yeah, right. Well,
what does this comma mean?
No, that's the calling card. But the thinking about, okay, how would you do this? That is such an exciting place, I think, to be in a reading process, because it means that the architecture is kind of already there. I believe in this play so much. I wonder, was it? I kind of know the answer to this question, but did it catch you by surprise in process? Staring back at your DNA in a way. I mean, I'm talking like in an emotional kind of way.
Oh yeah, yeah. Watching. There's a final speech that a character gives at the end, and really kind of the last two big movements, the last two scenes.
Yeah.
And it's very strange to be moved by your own work. And you feel very hubristic, but I think that what it is that the thing that was moving to me was to watch this work on actors, and just in a collaboration that I so respect, and I so admire everybody in the room, and to feel this kind of huge sense of connection and gratitude that other people are seeing something so personal to me, and are responding to something so personal to me, and are lending their incredible talents to something that's so incredibly personal. And I was wearing a mask in the room, and it was kind of obscured me going like this.
I think we were all there with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that, the play, which our audiences will see, it's so beautifully It's so beautifully delivered through this Korean American family, and I think, like all really terrific pieces of art, it has an undeniably universal message and an instantly recognizable, because it's about family, place to connect. But that place won't be the same for everyone, and you manage to find
Absolutely.
pieces
Yeah.
everywhere inside of what is an essential story, and components of it that no matter what your upbringing or background is, you're going to find a place to reference. And as
Yeah.
I think I
It's
yeah, so I don't know how you did that, but congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I think that it's about, it's that, you know, it's that old truism of, the most universal is the most specific is the most universal, the most universal is the most specific, right? And I think,
Yeah.
it's this incredible thing where you just, all you're trying to do, so much of a question I've been thinking to myself about recently is, who do you write for? Who do you make your art for? And I think that as specific as you can get with that, for me, is always helpful. When I am struggling on a project, it's always good to return to that first principle of who I'm making it for, and not making that just, and sometimes, and that's some, I think that, the difference between, me as a playwright versus, maybe in some ways, it's not even thinking about, like, oh, like an audience as 500 people sitting in a theater, or, this community in this town. I'm writing this for my family. I'm writing this for my brother. I'm writing this for my mother, right? And writing plays as kind of individualized gifts to people, hopefully, right, that they will enjoy, has been, something really helpful for me in process when I feel stuck or feel disheartened, to go, oh, I don't have to please everyone. I'm making this to make my mom laugh, or to make my dad laugh, or my brother cry,
Yes.
right? Um, and that was really, that was this play. I never wrote it with the intention to share it really with anyone outside of, I mean, I knew that I'd want to share it eventually, but it was actually so earnestly just written for this moment that I was just at home, with my family, and it was meant to be shared with them, right? And to write us specifically and honestly about, the types of experiences that we've had. And I do think that one of the most incredible things about sharing this play so far has been hearing people go, that reminds me of my brother. That reminds me of my dad. That reminds me, and talking to actors in our cast about that, and how this reflects moments of their childhood or their experience
Mm-hmm.
with family, who are Korean or Korean American. Also, talking to people from school that have read the play, who go, oh wow, this reminds me exactly of my dad from the Dominican Republic, right? How did you know about, one of my favorite stories was Sheldon Harnick when he wrote Fiddler. There was a Japanese production of Fiddler on the Roof that he went to go see in Tokyo or whatever. And he tells the story of, he goes to see the show, and then he's in like the lobby afterwards, and there's someone in the audience who goes, this is a great piece, but how did you research all of this about Japanese culture? This is so distinctly a Japanese show, right?
Right.
And I think, it's because he was telling this really, really specific story,
Yeah.
about Anatevka, right? It
Right.
was able to explode out, right? And I think that that's just that's a story that I think a lot about whenever I'm writing, because it's like, how can you drill down into as specific of a culture, a family, a character as you can. Yeah.
Well, yeah. As you know, when I spoke to you about it recently, that's the thing that I hooked into immediately. I'm a dad. I mean, it just so happens I like to camp, but beyond that, the generational relationships that are also at the center of the play, that stem and seam around democracy, which we don't have to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Those dynamics within the family, as they mirror that journey, is really specific. I will just underline in closing that your gifts are immense, and I learned a lot from you, Charlie, and I know the room did. And we're so grateful that you said yes to share it with SCR, and I know our audiences are going to love it, and they're going to love following you and getting to know you, you know?
Thank you. It was such a gift to get to be in a theater and to work with such incredible artists. And I'm really just grateful for the time and everybody's talents. And I'm really excited for people to see this, in a couple of weeks, and to be able to share this with more people, and to hear from them, and to hear about how it bounces off of their lives and their experiences. And because I think that, that's the alchemy of theater that we are, I think that everybody's really hungry for, again, is for people to be breathing in a room together, and that chemistry in a room. But I think that what's incredible about this process, and the incredible film crew that we put together, and kind of the thought and care that we put into making this thing in this last week, is that I think that we're going to be able to really recreate, a representation of that. And I really hope that we can have those conversations around the play too. Yeah.
Oh, we will, I'm sure. And well, I'm looking forward to circling back with you after it. And in the meantime, all of us at South Coast Rep wish you the best, and offer our deepest thanks for the work.